I love open source. I think it's the best way to build technology, not because it's open and accessible, but also because you end up building a better product. You have more eyeballs on the security of your product. You have people contributing, fixing typos, adding languages, fixing bugs, adding features. You have a fantastic pool of people to hire from that have worked with your code base before you send them a contract. I think there's many reasons to be open source, such as data security and white labeling and extensions and the community. But I've gotten to the point where I just think the open source companies will just build better products than their closed source alternatives. So I think that's a major learning for me.
Welcome to the Undefeated Underdogs podcast, where I unpack and narrate stories of ambitious people who turn obstacles into opportunities. My goal for this podcast is to create a platform to narrate underdog stories and maybe play a small, teeny tiny role in inspiring you. I intend to highlight the underdog mentality and make authentic conversations with people who play the long game, take action with a chip on their shoulder, and convert obstacles into opportunities. Buckle up, as I'll be bringing some authentic founders, VCs, community builders, and content creators who got underestimated their whole lives, and yet they beat all the odds to become insanely successful. Now, today I want to tell you a little bit about our awesome sponsor, Acquire.com. Selling a business is as tough as building a business. As someone who went through this process once, selling my own startup, I know the pain it takes to get to the end zone. This is where our sponsor shines. Imagine this. You're a founder who's built a solid SaaS product, acquired customers, and generating consistent monthly revenue. The problem is, you're not growing for whatever reason. Lack of focus, lack of skill, or just plain lack of interest, and you feel stuck. What should you do? The story I'd like to hear is, you buckled down, somehow reignited the fire, get past yourself and the cliches, and start working on your business rather than just in the business. You start building an audience, move out of your comfort zone to do sales and marketing, and in 6 months, you triple your revenue. The reality isn't as simple. Situations may be different from every founder facing this crossroads, but too many times, the story ends up being one of inaction and stagnation until the business becomes less valuable or worse, worthless. If you find yourself here or your story is likely headed down a similar road, I offer you a third option. Consider selling your business on Acquire.com. Capitalizing on the value of your time is a smart move. Acquire.com is free to list and they've helped hundreds of founders already. Go to try.acquire.com/Sharath and see for yourself if this is the right option for you. Now, let's get into today's episode. All right, this startup aims to connect 1 billion people by 2031. Yes, you heard it right, 1 billion. While that's a bold statement to make for a founder, but this guy is no normal one. Peer is a good friend of mine. He's a 4-time founder who went to YC and sold companies before. His latest mission is to make scheduling easy for everyone with cal.com, an open scheduling product that is infrastructure ready, open source, accessible, and extensible. I'm so excited to have Peer Richelsen on the call today with me on this podcast. Peer, welcome to the show. How are you feeling, my friend?
I'm doing great. Thank you for the invitation. How are you?
Absolutely. I'm doing great. I'm excited to chat with you. I think this is we've been trying to make this happen for a long time. I'm so glad that it's happening right now because today you're launching something on Product Hunt. You want to talk about it right off the bat?
Yeah, we are launching. First off, we have a monthly release cadence. So we have a 3.9 release last month on the 15th of March, and we're launching 4.0 as a major release on the 15th of April today. And with that, there comes a entirely new product that we've been working on for probably 6 months with an entire new team. So we're going from a single product to a multi-product company as of today. which we call this one Cal.com platform, and it's essentially it is a new product to build scheduling into your existing application. So if you are building a marketplace or
Right.
a SaaS product that needs scheduling, we provide you with developer tool, SDK, and APIs and React components. We're starting with React in the beginning, so pretty much React and Next.js support. We're hoping to add more frameworks in the future. But essentially, you get a very easy to use plug and play component system to add a calendar booking system, to have bookings and availabilities inside your application.
Wow, it almost feels like a low code solution for developers to plug in, play into their products, like
Yeah.
whatever their startups are building, and you're enabling that. I think it adds to that mission. Again, going back to that 1 billion, connecting 1 billion people. What is it like? Why did you start cal.com in the first place? Let's go back to the origins, and I want to dig deeper into what happened after Lean Hire. You were at On Deck as a head of product, and then what was it? What was the journey like to go from being a operator to again being a founder
Yeah.
at cal.com?
This is actually very interesting because the initial product that I wanted to build was actually Cal platform, right? So when I was working on Lean Hire, I was desperately looking for a plug and play customizable solution for my marketplace, right? I was connecting remote workers with companies. And we then launched a open source repo and people started contributing, but we got, I wouldn't say sidetracked, because ultimately our vision has always been to build a fantastic consumer facing product and a developer focused product. But we really focused on the consumer facing product initially, just to really understand the industry, the pains of scheduling, but also to build out the world's best components and the best APIs to do that. And so I'd say the past 2 years have really been more about understanding the space and building the technology. And then now we're slowly really reselling the tech we've built into these more infrastructure focused products. And so Lean Hire really needed Cal.com platform. And it's interesting to go back now after 2 years of building something mostly in a different industry,
Right.
And so yeah, that's really the reason why we're shipping this product. Why I'm so excited, because there's so many use cases, anywhere from a sales tool that needs a native scheduling component. Think about, HubSpot has its own scheduling system, or Close.com has its own link, but or Cron or Notion Calendar, what it's called today. I think in an ideal world, if you want to add a scheduling component to your system, you don't need to rebuild it from scratch. There's many issues you have, and you should not be dealing with that. You should build the best SaaS product, like the best sales tool, not the best scheduling tool. So it's really much closer to Stripe Elements, where you don't build your own payment rails and you shouldn't build your own time zone system.
Right.
But yeah, to go back to your original question, it's great. I love to be back in the founder's seat. I've been most of my life been a founder. I did YC in 2019, so it's been 5 years ago. I built 5 years before YC, so probably have like 10, 12 years of building products on my belt. On Deck was interesting. I think it's a fantastic company and vision. It was really a COVID phenomenon where we grow so fast and so quick, and then as COVID luckily disappeared slowly, as it become less relevant, I think also the company has had its impact on that remote course course industry. So that's been interesting to see. I mean, I left On Deck to start Cal.com way before, still during COVID, I think in 21 or something. So I just had to build this product. So that's why I left.
It is so fascinating to hear the answer, that came from you, because it almost feels like a full circle. You started something and you wanted something uh, during lean hire, and now you after that you build something entirely different, which is actually competing with the big guns like Calendly, like like HubSpots of the world. Like calendar space is so crowded, and then you're coming back to the actual problem which you actually wanted to solve, like enabling founders to get a head start when they have to build something for themselves, and you're enabling it. It's so fascinating. uh quick uh jump on, by the way, I think I forgot to tell this for listeners. I'm very, very fortunate to say this. I am a very tiny investor in Cal.com during their Series A. And shout out to Peer for giving the opportunity. It's so fascinating to see the growth. I'm always amazed and inspired by you, man. So I just want to put that out uh, as well. But going back to this crowded space, calendar space is so freaking crowded. There is SavvyCal, there is ZCal, there is TidyCal, AllCal, Scron, now NotionCal, Calendly, which is a $1 billion company already. Why the heck you wanted to be in this space?
No, I disagree. I don't think we are. I don't think you can compare Cal.com with the first companies you've mentioned, like Notion or Vimcal and Savical. Savical, yes, ish. Um, I think what we're doing is very, very different to what all these companies are
Mm-hmm.
doing, and also, frankly speaking, what Calendly is doing. I mean, I don't think it's actually crowded in the space that we are in. Like we do scheduling infrastructure and yes, we have a consumer facing product for individuals and teams, but
Mm.
it's not really our main focus when it comes to business. It's really just more a um, marketing approach where we want to connect as many people as we can, and that includes uh, consumers. But um, I mean, we don't have a calendar interface. A lot of people think cal.com means you have a calendar, but actually we
Right.
really just focus on the scheduling, and you can really take any calendar. We integrate with every calendar from Amy to Vimcal to Notion. We try to be compatible and be an
Mm.
abstraction above each application and just really provide good infrastructure. And so if you look into the market and then if you add open source to the cocktail, there's really not much competition for us. There's
Right.
I cannot think of a single open source scheduling product out there. You name it. If you know it, then I'm happy to send it to me. So the industry we're selling into, let's say highly regulated industries, telehealth, banking, governments,
Mm.
and similar. There is really nothing out there, and so it is really not a crowded market. It's as crowded as you would define another SaaS industry that has like a little bit of overlap, like fintech. Like, sure,
Mm-hmm.
fintech is a crowded market, but if you do a really really good banking infrastructure niche market first, I think you're very likely to be the only one in that space. So um, it's not like these products are competitive. Yes, Calendly can be exchanged with cal.com, as a link, but like we we don't see that as a business model for us. Like we don't monetize freemium users, and I think that's also a great perk for us because we don't have to, because we have like this really really strong enterprise muscle nowadays. Where
Right.
I always joke our free product is our competitors' pro product, and so I don't really see that as like relevant competition, to be honest.
And I think that's one of the reasons why you have a free for individuals plan, right? Like it's it's kind of saying fuck you to Calendly in a way, because you're just giving away everything they're charging for. And uh, I know it's kind of a growth hack that you wanted to get adaptation, or get into the market super fast. Talk to me about uh, the perception, like as someone who is not into open source, or who doesn't know the whole infrastructure jargon. when they hear cal.com, they're like, okay, this is another calendar product, right? So how did you differentiated yourself when you go, you know, I think investors get it, that's why you went to 776. Shout out to Alexis Ohanian for being like a big supporter in this mission. But yeah, just from a bird's eye view, how are you trying to differentiate yourselves all throughout this journey since 2020?
Yeah, there's a couple of things I want to jump in here. So first off, we have a very unorthodox pricing history where we launched as a paid only product.
Hmm.
Free was has always been on our mind, but we started out actually with no VC funding. Some
Yeah.
people may have seen that when we launched on Product Hunt the first time. We were very fortunate to raise an early round, but we still kept our pricing as it is for at least a year. When you think about free products, there's only two types of free products. There are free and shitty and free and premium. And when a lot of people think about, I need to grow faster, they think about like, how can I be cheaper or free as my competitors, right? And then like think about the business model second. So
Right.
they launch a product and they never think about the unit economics. They never think about how they eventually will make money. And they tell VCs a fairy tale and then it never happens and they go out of business. For us, it was the opposite. We really only launched a free plan once we nailed the enterprise business. And when we actually announced our free plan, we sent an email to every pro subscriber, the people who are out there from the beginning, and said we would cancel your account. Nothing's going to change, and you don't need to pay in the future. And here's why. We found a way to make the same amount of money, if not more, with charging larger customers. And we're not the ones who invented this. GitHub has been a paid product for probably the longest time. Maybe it has flipped now. But when GitHub was acquired by Microsoft said we're going to make it free for everyone because we mostly care about the larger companies and the enterprise deals. And being a GitHub user or non-user, those news are like, holy shit! Wow, I get a premium product for free now. It's like, imagine, no one wants free lemonade on the streets, right? Because you're like,
Right.
maybe someone pissed in there.
Yeah.
But if I give you a free Tesla, you're like, holy shit, right?
Yeah. Either it's
Like
stolen or something's wrong with it.
No. Like if you know it's a legit free Tesla because
Oh,
like I'm
yeah,
just a
yeah.
friend, right? Like you're like,
Yeah.
oh shit, damn, I know a Tesla is expensive, but I get it for free. And
Right.
so you really don't want to be in the free lemonade. You want to be in the free Tesla industry, and you can really
Man,
only
I love
achieve
that.
that and you can only really achieve that by building a really premium product and charging premium customers for it. And there's multiple products out there that have achieved this. Figma is another great example of giving stuff away for free. And you're like, holy shit, how is Adobe charging so much from me as an individual? But like, I can get everything for free on Figma. Like, what's going on here? And so I would lie if I say I came up with this, but I find this a very interesting strategy to launch a product. And I would never market us as the cheaper alternative to something. In fact, we're probably the highest, like the priciest product in the market right now when it comes to actually charging our customers. But mostly because we've built such a strong product in a market there where there's very little competition to be really negotiating on price.
So being a premium product offering the value for free, was this always your long-term strategy where even when you started like, cal.com, Cal and So, is that the product like the first one if I'm not wrong? Is that like your strategy that you want to implement, or is it something that you adapted as you grow?
Well, I mean, truth be told, I don't think I did not think that this would work out in the beginning. I mean, I launched this on GitHub as Calenzo, and I really just needed the tech for my marketplace, right?
Right.
And I think that's the best learning. Build something that you need yourself because you automatically become the first customer. And so I did not intend to start a premium branded company from the get-go. And I don't think anyone should, in fact. I think you should be interested in something that's like solving your problems and then eventually grow into it. But having had the chance to raise funding and not be bootstrapping and having upfront cash to buy cal.com, which is obviously not a cheap acquisition, and really building a premium brand and premium product. No, I mean, you eventually, you think about where you want to position yourself, and, there's Trader Joe's and there's Whole Foods, right? So every niche has its place. We just really wanted to build and I think this is also orthodox, like a premium open source product. Because I think before, if I think about open source, I don't think about like high quality technology. Yes, Linux is amazing, but if you compare a Linux desktop with a Mac OS desktop, you realize, okay, fuck, this works, but it doesn't feel like, premium. Same thing with all the other open source projects like LibreOffice and all that stuff. Like they do their job and they're typically maintained by like a foundation or something, but I would not like describe them as premium technology. It's more like it does its job, it's free, I don't complain.
Right.
And so I think what we did is really change the perception of how open source technology can actually look and feel. I think that's been a really, really important point for me.
As someone who's watching you from afar, your journey as as founder, as cal.com, as a startup, you really changed the same thing what you said, changed the perception for me as a viewer. I'm not a developer, but as a viewer, as a startup enthusiast, as someone who loves startups in the space, you changed the notion of open source. I loved what you did in the past, which is the branding was amazing. You launched with this superhuman type thing where you created like that FOMO. Hey, get your handle in the beginning, right? I loved that. I was like one of those first like to grab a handle for myself. That was one thing. The other thing, you designed a freaking font for yourself. The whole branding. I loved that those when you go back now, it might feel like those are the small steps, but they actually played a massive, massive role in shaping or changing the way people conceive open source. So let's talk about that. You being in this room, I have to ask this question about open source. We have to kind of like address the elephant in the room. So open source, talk to me about your love for it as a developer. Where did it all started, and what is like the biggest misconception about open source that you want to try to like kind of take it away, like kind of like I want to eliminate this and give it a fresh coat of paint?
Yeah, to be honest, I mean, I love open source. I think it's the best way to build technology, not because it's open and accessible, but also because you end up building a better product. You have more eyeballs on the security of your product. You have people contributing, fixing typos, adding languages, fixing bugs, adding features. You have a fantastic pool of people to hire from that have worked with your code base before you send them a contract. I think there's many reasons to be open source, such as data security and white labeling and extensions and community. But I've gotten to the point where I just think the open source companies will just build better products than their closed source alternatives. So I think that's a major learning for me. I don't think there's a reason to not build something not open source. I mean, sure, there is somewhat of a perception around like what's the IP you're building? Like what's the
Right.
asset? But I mean, in an age of AI and like, it doesn't really struck me as in code will ever be defensible. I've seen this a lot from some of the bootstrapping and indie crowd where they complain when someone launches I think Vercel got under the buzz recently where they launched like open source templates of someone else's startup. And I'm like, well, clearly you don't understand that like you need to build more IP than just the code. Like um, the network effects and the branding and the customer support and the experience of the business is so much more important. So to
Right.
me, the idea of like keeping code hidden as a business benefit, I've rarely seen to work out. And I mean, there are still reasons to be closed source. I mean, you can say what you want about OpenAI and open source AI, but
Right.
clearly there are some cases. I'm not advocating for that, but if you're building a really good product that's like not a large language model with like proprietary data or something, I mean, who knows? I think even the open source AI will outmatch every closed source AI in the next 12 to 18 months anyway. So it's probably not even worth having this conversation. But yeah, it really depends. If you want to be a closed source product that's being beaten to the gut by an open source successor, or if you just want to be that open source successor in the first place, right?
And I think what you said about IP, we live in the age of AI, and you said what you said is kind of true, which is you don't necessarily need to own the code. Uh, I think you need to own beyond that. Code is becoming kind of like a commodity, right? And going back to, I always have this fascination about open source winning when they're pretty much giving everything away. Uh, GitHub pretty much like one, MuleSoft, like there are these bigger companies, right? Like they
Mm-hmm.
did this before. I think Mozilla is one of the popular browsers which are open source as well. If I'm not wrong, again, I'm not an expert in this space, but uh, as a fan, these were some of the things like Red Hat. Some of this open source bigger brands winning and becoming like a billion-dollar companies getting acquired by bigger corporations. And going back to this notion from Steve Jobs, he was completely against like this open source thing. He always wanted to make create walls. Like iOS is very kind of like protected even till today. Talk to me about that. Like in this world the world is really divided into like two people,
I
like two
disagree.
personas.
Disagree. I think that was a different time, and Steve Jobs wanted to build the best product.
Hmm.
Period. He's very famous for being technology agnostic and not caring much about the technology. He cares more about the need of the customer. And I think
Right.
um,
That's true.
so. I don't think he probably has been more into a closed like walled garden, but I mean, arguably, Android is also probably even more successful than iOS. It's if Android would just be better and higher quality, and the phones would be better. I think
Hmm.
iOS and iPhones had no chance. It just for this market, I think it just goes back to who has the better product. The customer doesn't care, and I think Steve Jobs got that right. Like the customer doesn't care if it's like, and he
Sure.
said this on stage, like if you're using Flash or HTML
Mm-hmm.
or whatever, they care about whether they get a problem fixed in a fast and easy way. And so I I I don't like the notion of like, so how are you different to X? Well, we're open source. No, you also have to be better. You have to be way better than the alternative,
Hmm.
um, because you otherwise you only attract the open source diehards who are okay with a subpar product that's like, but it's open
Right.
source. I don't want to be in that space. I don't want to be a worse version of something but open. I don't think that makes anyone happy.
I think if you ask me what you're doing right now with cal.com, what I would say is if Apple were to build Android and make it open source, that's what you're doing with, calendar infrastructure, scheduling infrastructure. It's like offering premium product, but putting but making it open. Like I think that's what the simplest way to define. I don't know if you agree or not, but I feel that's what I've the qualities your bar is raising raising the bar so much higher,
Mm-hmm.
and also making other people playing in the game kind of like showing them path. Yes, you can build a premium product. Talking about product, you were, I think, head of the product at On Deck as well, and you're a product mind, in a way, because you've built so many things before. Where do you get the inspiration from? Do you have a source that you go after? uh, how did you do what you're doing right now, especially in a product space?
I, I take psilocybin and lay in a hammock and look into the sky. No, I don't know. Where do I get my inspiration from? I just really care about using my own product, right?
Hmm.
And want to make it better. I don't. I mean, I think there's inspiration from using everyday products and using other people's products, and they have something that's nice. Or I mean, I also don't think there's anything wrong using competitors' products. I mean, I haven't
Mm-hmm.
logged into anyone recently because nothing really stood out that I found interesting.
Right.
But I mean, if you want to, let's say, migrate people from an existing product to another product because yours is just better, you probably need to be somewhat of compatible and have similar data models and similar approaches at least. Um, so I think that's just, if you take a look at Facebook and copying Snapchat stories, you just really need to be better, right?
Hmm.
I think the web quickly understands quote unquote like standards in a sense of like, okay, yeah, this is how we do certain things now. And then just the question becomes who builds the best product on that standard, right?
Hmm.
I don't really go around and look for inspiration. I really just talk to my customers and see what they need, and if it's feasible and reasonable to implement that and figure out like what they really want instead of what they say.
Hmm. I think we're having this conversation because of this tweet you posted recently about uh, being bootstrapped, then started cal.com, and went back to proper VC funding. Uh, Talk to me about, like, learning the transition from uh, being a bootstrapped founder. Previously, you were venture backed, and then you bootstrapped. Yeah, how are you feeling about both worlds? It's also
Yeah, I
divided, like,
mean,
just like open source and closed. It's pretty much you know divided, black or
yeah,
white.
I see. Here's the thing, and this may annoy a couple people. I mean, most people probably have blocked me already. Well, at least one person has blocked me already. I don't know why. Like, get him on a call with me. I think we would really vibe. I think we're very similar, both kind of like Germanic nomads who like to build and hack things. The only difference is that
Right.
I chose to eat the dangerous, toxic VC pill. No, I mean, again, I think when it comes to funding, right, you
Mm-hmm.
can have your own money, you can use other people's money, you can get a loan, you can get a grant, a science grant or something, or government grant.
Mm-hmm.
It really doesn't matter. And I think what's interesting is that like one part of this industry really quote unquote like identifies with their way of building something. Like let's say the Indian bootstrap crowd is like you put it in your bio, in your Twitter bio, in your whatever, you hang around on indiehackers.com and you go to indie meetups and stuff.
Right.
I've never seen someone be like, I'm a proud VC founder on Twitter or something. They're too busy building a large business, right? Like for me, I've built bootstrap businesses before. I've sold bootstrap business before. I've made decent money directly into my bank account with no VCs, no angel investors, no nothing. Um, to be frank, I just found it, that's a personal thing and everyone's different. I just found it very boring. To me, just increasing my personal bank account's number was not fulfilling in a sense of like building something meaningful with a team of people that I trust and can like work together. It's the classic saying is if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go in a team. And I think the more important differentiation is not whether you're bootstrapped or VC funded. I think the difference should be whether you work alone or in a team. Um, and if you can work in a team while being bootstrapped, I think you hit the holy grail. You probably made a lot of money in the past. Maybe you had a good
Right.
job. Maybe you made some savings. Maybe you have parents who just keep funding you. But like to run a team with like 10 people or 20, you need to have a really good business from the get-go, like from the start. Um,
True.
and so I think I've seen a lot of bootstrappers now actually hiring out a team from their previous successes. You know, maybe they've sold a business or they made a couple million a year over 5 years or so, and so they now have the financial,
Mm.
you know, war chest to hire people. But you know, if you want to build something big really fast, and that's to me the definition of startup. You know, you want to connect 1 billion people, and you want to do it within a timeline of 10 years. You know, you simply cannot bootstrap that.
Mm.
Yes, there's outliers. Yes, there's like all these companies people point to, but the real truth is a lot of things need a lot longer and a lot more money than you need and than you think you need. And
Right.
and you would never build these products as a bootstrap founder. And you know, I find it very hypocritical when bootstrappers are like, "Oh, I can build this tool with Stripe and Zapier and SendGrid," and I'm like, "Yeah, but all of these companies you just mentioned are like funded businesses. Like, uh, it's it's so hypocritical to me to rely on such tools that were built by people who, you know, raise funding and build a large business. You know."
Mm. I think, yeah, again, I think it's so divided. And I think people should not worry about, honestly, my opinion on this is it's just a personal take.
Yeah,
Uh,
and but here's the thing. Again, I mean, I have a lot of bootstrap founder friends and a lot of VC funded friends, and the conversations are very different. You know, like one is how
right.
can I maximize my personal bank account and how can I, reduce cost and drive up margin, and
Right.
and the other one is how can I reach 1 billion people? How can I build out my go to
Right.
market team? How can I hire the best executives? How can I
Right.
make sure my team is happy and healthy and stays for many years? How can I assign equity and all that stuff? So
Right.
um, to me, those are very different conversations. And the money saving, and this may sound absurd, but like you can save money when you have a working large business, and then you can like optimize your costs. But if you make 2 grand a month and you optimize your baseline by like 20% and you spend 20% less, nobody cares. Like make 10 grand, make 100 grand first, and then figure out how to decrease your cost by 20%. It's the
Yeah.
same way as people like say, how can I like diversify my portfolio? And then they have like 5K of stocks. I'm like, bro, like doesn't matter. Like, don't like
Right.
build a wealth generating engine such as a company or something else before you start to do all the funky tricks and optimize. Like, so to me, I'm just not very interested in the whole look at how much money I make personally or all of
Right.
that. I just really care about like building something that I find interesting. Some of the things I build are not for 1 billion people, right?
Right. Yeah.
but this one is, and so you really need to surround yourself with people who share the same vibe.
Yeah. I think that's where I want to go. My point is to it's such a personal choice, and it's such a contextual thing to uh, make a decision of. Like in this case, you just said that, right? If you're building something you have to build at scale, you have to have money because you have to work with smarter people than you, bring them
Hmm.
onto the team, and make them or give them work, or you work with them to actually achieve that bigger mission. So, and I know a lot of bootstrap founders who are ambitious too. So it's not
Yeah,
about
100%.
it's completely apples and oranges. I feel people should actually chill out a little bit, especially on Twitter. It's fun to maybe it's fun. It's just time consuming for people to rant and kind of like go share opinions. But I think we all have to chill about opinions and build the actual freaking product and do something for people. I think that's the end of everybody's goal. It's to, again, to your point, not make money but to build something better. How can we do that at scale? I'm building right now a simple small side project, and it's definitely not going to reach $1 billion. I know it's not VC backed, backable. I think you have to have self-awareness, and I think that's where people should really focus on rather than sharing. It actually is very funny on Twitter that these debates happen. It brings back to me, takes me back to this greatest of the all-time debate. Is it Michael Jordan or LeBron?
Mm-hmm.
Who cares? Like, just enjoy the
Nobody
game.
cares. Yeah, yeah,
Just
nobody
enjoy.
cares.
Just enjoy the
Also,
game, right?
it's the wrong energy spent. I
Yeah,
do understand, and I also again feel free to put me in a room with someone who has a very controversial opinion on this. But like, is this where you really want to spend your energy on? Like, I understand that there are VC funded founders who got screwed by their board or by their
correct,
investors or something. But it's if you really, really, really want to compare, you would need to compare the top 1% of VC funded founders with the top 1% of bootstrap. You would need to compare the bottom 1%, the ones that got really screwed of VC
correct.
founders with the really bottom 1% of bootstrap founders who probably, never made a dime, lost their job, lost their girlfriend, and are
Mm,
homeless, right? Like,
yep,
um, there are I'm not saying that's the same percentages, but you cannot compare the worst case, which by the way are totally preventable as well. You can keep control over the board, and you can any person can like technically decide who to race from. It's just whether you have
mm,
the runway, to make that decision. So it's really but in the founder's hands to who to raise money from, do background checks, and so all of this is preventable. I do like the idea of speaking up and like speaking out about bad actors, but that
right.
doesn't invalidate the entire system, right?
Yeah,
And I think another argument is, as a bootstrap founder, you get all the money into your bank account,
right.
but as a VC funded founder, you don't, and so you're losing out. No, I have a
Yeah,
salary. I make a good salary for my job. I'm very happy with it.
yeah,
And so my salary as a Series A startup founder, and it's all public, is probably better. And I'm just an average Series A startup. Like there's many more who are way more successful. Like I don't feel special in my position. And I think the money that I take home as a pure salary is still beating a lot of bootstrap founders and I still have all the upside of $1 billion business if it ever gets that far.
yeah,
So I think we should be very careful of not comparing. If we compare apples to apples, we should compare
yeah,
the shiniest apple with the shiniest orange, and the most rotten apple with the most rotten orange. I
yeah.
think at least that way would make a little bit of sense. But if we don't do that, then it's just like, why are you wasting your energy on this?
I would say don't just compare. It's so bad. Once you start getting into that, it's a slippery slope. I feel
I think you can compare. I think it's reasonable to pick a lifestyle. It's just you need to understand why you're doing certain things. Like why are you raising funding? And there's many businesses where you should not be raising funding. As I said before, bootstrapping is a perfectly reasonable tactic to build a small cash flow positive, low cost, low effort business, right?
right.
That's perfectly fine. But like, don't get, right, and same for VC, like don't raise VC just because it's shiny and you get press. I couldn't care less. I don't think any paper has ever written about us, and I could not care less. And I reject every journalist who reaches out to me.
Right.
So it's yeah, don't do it for the wrong reasons. But you can still
Correct.
compare. Like not every lifestyle is made for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, I wouldn't. Again, my take. I wouldn't compare. I would study. There's a difference. You just observe, study. Okay. There is.
Talk to
There is.
people. Talk to people
Talk to
who are
people.
negatively affected, positively affected.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah.
You do your research. I think first it should come from like what you said. You have to be fucking self-aware about the idea you're building,
Mhm.
the product you're building. If you don't have
Yeah.
that self-awareness, that's
Yeah.
that's something you should work on as a founder. After that, everything falls into place. Again, again, we are getting into rant. So I want to also talk about a couple of things. One thing you mentioned about open source, especially scheduling, as an opportunity. Talk to me about what other opportunities that are available out there that people should actually go after. especially in open source at scale, that you are like, okay, if I were not to do scheduling infrastructure, I would do this?
I would do something with atoms. I've been thinking about this idea a lot to deploy solar on farmland.
Mm,
Mostly because I was born and raised on a farm, and we have so much like unused land slash land that's just used for crops, and agrivoltaics is a way to run solar panels on top of crops. And if you take a look at any statistic, any prediction of the future, and also research how panels on top of crop actually improves the quality of crops, I think it's just an inevitable step to do that. A lot of crops are actually getting too much sun today, so they need a little bit of shade, and it
mm,
makes really no sense to cover it up with like plastic if you can put solar on top of it. So I'd say for me, that's another really, really large industry. I mean, the energy production worldwide is $1 trillion industry.
mm,
Um, and so that's something I'd say focus on. And I think it's a natural step for most founders to, take bigger and bigger swings. So
mm.
that's probably something I would focus on if I had more time on my hands.
What about open source? Any opportunities that energy? That's a separate, completely, like climate change and all that is,
Yeah, you can be open. You can build an open source solar company. I mean, Elon Musk has open source a lot of patents and like charging
sure.
connectors and all of that stuff. So I mean, the solar punk community is very into open source as well. So I think that would be the same. Yeah.
Yeah. How about open source software? Let's get into that. What do you think about open source software that either people are overshadowing? They're not like paying keen attention to that. The opportunity exists still today.
I don't know. I mean, again, I build software for problems that I have. Um,
Yeah.
I I'm pretty happy with my life right now. I think yeah, no, I don't really know of any open source technology I would build right now.
I love your contentment,
Maybe
Pierre.
maybe a open source Neuralink alternative, but that also includes hardware, so I don't know.
I love that.
Like if Neuralink is a closed source business, then it's probably going to be the next iPhone, as in a sense of like human interface.
Hmm.
So you probably want to build the Android of Neuralink.
Hmm.
Interesting.
You also mentioned in the previous answers about the strategy of going after enterprise, going after the big guns. Then you have the opportunity to kind of make everything free. That's kind of like a strategy that worked well with other companies. Do you want to give some uh, pointers or some tips about enterprise sales? Like, how did you approach? I think, if I'm not wrong, this is your first time doing enterprise sales compared to lean hire. If I'm
Yeah,
not wrong,
pretty
again.
much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So talk to me about how didn't you get into it? Like, it's a completely new arena for you as a founder. How did you learn what you learned and implement it? And some of the highs, lows. What are the lessons about enterprise sales?
Yeah. Um, I think it does help if you have a consumer facing product, because that way you can build up a brand and a reputation, and you can really show that you know what you're doing, because you can work with like small customers initially, and you can, I don't know, make 2, 3, 4 million bookings with your software. Enterprise buyers are a lot more skeptical about the feasibility, the age of your company. Um, a lot of people don't know this, but we also raise a lot of funding just to have the runway that some of these deals require, right? Like if you talk to a bank,
Hmm.
they close contracts on a 10-year horizon. So if you tell them, oh, we only have like a year of runway, a pre-seed startup, so you will not have a good sales process. So
Right.
having raised a decent amount of funding that gives us 10, 20, 15 years of runway, you really want to build up your 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 company in a sense where it's interesting to enterprise buyers. It's not a sales technique; it's a whole culture thing. Uh, it's the first time for me to do enterprise sales, but it's really not that different to normal sales. It's just the process, the procurement, the whole redlining of contracts. I think that's different. But that's something you learn quickly, right? So have a good lawyer when it comes to contracting. Have a good procurement team internally. Have a good team that knows how to talk to procurement, and know how to convince decision makers. Figure out who's the best decision maker for said transaction. It is very interesting. It is a really interesting game to me. It's very fulfilling to help people get better scheduling, and then you also get like really good feedback, because let's say if you roll out the technology to 1,000 people, and they have 1,000 meetings, now you have a fantastic new audience that really loves your product. It sucks if your product is shit, but that's something you need to figure out first, right?
And where should one start? Like, did you use investors network to get into these intros with big companies?
Yeah, we
How did you?
tried. It's hard, like, because a lot of VCs and investors, like if you have someone specific that they have a good intro, then it works. But if it's just quote unquote a generic, outbound, they don't do better than you, really. So yeah, VCs help, investors help, advisors help, anyone helps. But I think you just need to me, and it sounds absurd, but like have a really, really good product that a lot of people end up using, because every head of engineering at a larger corporation is also a individual who probably needs to do a bunch of bookings, who has to talk to, I don't know, a therapist or whatever. And so if you can build a product that can kind of have like a grassroots growth, but then also impacts, COO, CEO, CPOs, head of engineering, head of product, it's a lot easier. Like we've closed a bunch of larger contracts where the decision makers were already using our product for a year, right? That really helps. Same with Figma and Notion. I think that's a very similar playbook.
Talking about VCs, you raised from 776. You raised from a bunch of people, like incredible individual investors like Naval, Jack Altman, like, and going on and on, Balaji S, and so on and so forth. How did you do that? Like, you have any? I think going back to that, building for 1 billion people, I need some money, and I have to go after enterprise. I need solid runway. So it's kind of like, if I have money, I have to do this. Then going to investors. How would you do that? Show me something. So it's kind of like a chicken and egg problem for every founder. So how did you approach? I'm curious about your method of approaching these folks. Your conviction levels. How did you work on that with Bailey, of course, your co-founder? Yeah, talk to me about that. That particular journey about fundraising.
Yeah, well, two things here. First, we did raise in probably the hottest startup market in the last 20 years. So whatever I say today is like telling you the numbers I won the lottery with. So that's a little bit different. I mean, first things first, we would have raised a very successful raise today if we were having the same traction today. So I don't think it was like only the market. We would have raised a little bit less funding, but again, we haven't really used any of the last Series A funding in the first place. So money-wise, I think we would have been fine either way. I think what we had going for us was that, and you can read it up, we launched on Product Hunt as a very early stage, like unfunded thing, and it was not even a company, and everyone just went crazy, like every product of the day, week, month, we crushed every milestone there, and we had like our sign up was vertical, and the product was barely working, was barely ready, anything. So when you hit product market fit, it's really hard to not raise funding, because you have revenue, you have customers, you have retention, you have community, like everyone wants to be part of it. So I guess that's the answer. Like, just build a really, really fucking good product. And to to get that is you need to be good at what you're doing. You need to learn how to build good products. You need to understand what the market wants, but you need to do it really, really fast. I think, and this is similar to indie hackers, right? Like I've always tried to launch the most bare bone version as soon as I can to see if it's working or not. Like Lean Hire had like 150 upvotes on Product Hunt. Not that Product Hunt is the metric for success, but
Correct.
clearly there are things that work out from the get-go, and there are things that take a little bit more time. So your muscle should be to understand what a good product is, ship it as soon as you can, learn from the market, and then drop it if it's not something you want to work on, or keep going if it has potential. Fundraising, it's really hard to have graphs that go to the top right and not be able to fundraise. Then it's probably a you problem. The founder maybe is an asshole, or you have a bad reputation, or I don't know, whatever. But if you have something that works, I think it's really hard to not raise funding. The amount, it really is the amount of like, how big is your vision? How much money do you need? That's like a common question of VCs, of like, how much money do you need? How much do you want to raise? And if your story is reasonable, if the market is reasonable, if you have good examples why you can achieve that, I think you can try raise a larger round, and then if that fails, you just raise a little bit less, and it's really just about how much money you need.
I think going back to basics, build a freaking premium product that people love. Going back to YC, going back to Hologram, build something people want. I wanted to touch a little bit about YC. How did it change you as a founder?
How did it change me as a founder? Well, I mean, I'd say everything. You come from a European German background, and you fucking suck in everything, in fundraising, and talking to customers and building product. And you go to physically. I went to Mountain View. It was not an SF, but in Mountain View, and you meet all these fantastic founders who kind of get stuff a little bit faster than you, and so your first reaction is to either to get faster at things. But then also, if you think about the United States as a market, the market's just like, I don't know, 4 times bigger than any single European country. Like even Germany is a what, $80 million market, 80 million people market. The US is 300 something. So it's a different vibe. Like the cars are bigger, the food is bigger, the markets are bigger, the money's bigger, the jobs have a higher salary. It's definitely a maxing country. So it's very interesting. It definitely changes you. I think for me personally speaking, I like the hybrid of humble and business first approach of Europe, and focus on mental health and longevity of your company, and not building a vaporware product that just looks good but doesn't work. But also, you got to sprinkle in the ambition and the market interest and the hustle of the US. I think that's still unbeaten.
Do you ever feel self-doubt, Peer?
I have bad days. I think everyone has bad days. Self-doubt, not so much, because there are certain things you cannot control, but the ones that I can control, I know they either take time or expertise. And once you have built a good network, you either take time and figure out yourself, or you hire expertise and pay someone to figure it out. For example, when I was getting started, I was like crazy afraid of accounting and bookkeeping and taxes, and I was like, yeah, well, you hire a tax accountant. It's not that wild. So I think self-doubt, no, not as much as when you have bad investors. The good investors really support you, and the good team members and co-founders. You really get through everything. Again, I think this business is also very different, because we make a very decent amount of revenue early on, and we're growing fast, and everything looks great from the outside. Sure, we have our fires inside, right? Like downtimes happen if like upstream providers are having issues, or your database is getting cooked by, I don't know, 1 million requests out of nowhere. So yeah, that sucks. But no, like I'm very positive. I'm I'm looking pretty positively on the future. Also, when it comes to other major problems that humans have to deal with, I'm pretty positive.
Talk to me about optimism. I want to sidetrack a little bit about founder mindset, mentality. Yeah, what drives you as a founder? And also, I want to you touched upon positivity, which I'm a big fan of. And I think fundamentally, I believe, regardless of where you are, what you're doing, you have to be fundamentally positive and optimistic about what you're doing, especially in startups. As a human being, that actually gives you more leverage to take a step forward if you're
Mhm.
facing a failure, and if you're being successful, it makes you humble, because anything can happen at any day. So yeah, talk to me about like your founder mindset, uh, optimism, and all the jazz.
I mean, I think if you have to be somewhat stupid to start a company, that definitely is not a recommended plan for. There's a reason why like schools don't prepare people for starting a business, just because it's really it's really stupid. Like don't like it as long as you need to be very crazy, and you need to get crazy slowly, otherwise you probably
Mm-hmm.
yeah go nuts too quick. So I think if you do something for 10, 15 years, it's just that, it's just muscle memory. There's
Mm.
um, nothing really, like I understand now how someone like Elon sleeps with all that craziness, because he's just been exposed to a crazy environment for 30 years. So
Mm.
it's nothing you can't learn. It's just more of like what is important to me is good diet, good workouts, and everything you can control within your own environment, like what you eat, what information you consume, whether you're like in the we're all gonna die camp, or you are more in the let's fix problems camp and get to work. Um, yeah, no, I don't think there's any silver bullet. It's just, keep your head cool most of the time.
I love that, man. I think you're so, for the things you're doing, you're pretty chilled. I didn't expect this. I was expecting, because on your Twitter, you seem to be someone who is always either at rage or
No, that's not true. I mean,
no.
listen,
Again, of course, that's
yeah,
what. Let me complete my thought.
okay.
As someone, we're talking to each other for the first time. I know you from afar. Like I said, I'm a fan. I believe in you. I love what you're doing. And when you go to Twitter, I think that's a lesson there as well for people. Don't judge people by the cover of the book. You have to read the book itself, right? I think talking to you, it feels like I'm talking to a friend who I've known probably the last 20 years. It feels like so natural to me. I don't know about you, how you feel about talking to me. At least I'm feeling so connected. Like it's an instant connect. Okay, this guy is pretty chilled. He's playing long. And I recently heard this podcast episode from David Sendra, Founders Podcast. Shout out to him. He talks about Jay-Z. It's about Jay-Z. That actually changed my mindset, which actually what you said. If you play long enough, like give yourself 10, 20 years of time, you will basically learn everything in that flow. And eventually, that's what even I think Charlie Munger or Warren Buffett, either of one of them said this. You deserve what you are going after, whatever it is, right? I think having that, you saying that answer reminded me, like, okay, man, Peer is so chilled, so like normal, like, and because you're going after such a big mission, and by default, that's the misconception I feel founders like you, I don't know, I'm just again taking a guess, at least face. If you go after a big ambition, you have to be pretty serious about pretty much everything. And that is, I think, that a lot of people should change about thinking about founders like you. It's like, it's, we're normal people. You have habits and you have, like, these routines that you follow. You have this perspective. I love what you said about we're all going to die. I think that's nobody's going to change that. I feel given the
Yes,
time we
happened.
have. I think you said that in the previous answer, but I feel
Okay, yeah.
it feels like you have that perspective, and I use this as well, which actually kind of helps me get away from self doubt. I think we're in a pale blue dot, if you think about it, right? Like 100 years ago, 100 years from now, nobody wants to talk about us, and no, maybe 200 years, 300 years, right? So I think using that as a that's the truth, ultimate truth. So I feel that's something, at least it's working for me to keep going. And I think success is something that you should define for yourself. But Pierre, I'm so happy that we're chatting. I just want to say that I felt so connected to you. uh,
Hashtag no homo. No, yeah, it's fun. It's always fun to, go over these topics. I mean, if anyone wants to reach out to me, I think my DMs are open on Twitter or x.com/peerrich. Yeah, happy to go over any other topic in the future. Just hit me up.
Awesome. One last thing before we wrap up, I want to ask about your beef with Supabase. Is that is that is that it's a fun thing, or is it serious? I can't really judge. It's
No,
so it's so
it's
intense. It's so fucking
it's
intense. It's like, what the fuck is
very
going on Monday? It's
no,
like end of the world.
it's very very serious. No. We really really hate each other.
Wow.
No, kidding. Of course not. No, it's listen. Paul is an investor. We are
Yeah,
very good friends. We had a love. It's all marketing. It's all you got
I know.
scammed. Yeah.
I am, because I think for a second it feels like you're playing with us. For a second it's like, whoa, these memes are so offensive. For a second it's like, okay, they're all chilled. For a second it's like, man, these guys are going nuts. But I'm excited for Monday. I'm excited for today, and I'm pumped. I'll be there to support, of course, support you as a tiny investor, and big believer. Tiny investor, but massive believer. That I will tell.
Thanks.
And yeah, I love this conversation, Pierre. I think I hope founders listening learned a ton from you, approaching a problem, approaching a startup, approaching a mentality, uh, and living in present and thinking in the future, aiming for a better future, but doing a better job in terms of producing high quality premium products. I think that's the ultimate combination. Uh, any closing thoughts before we wrap up?
No, again, feel free to upvote us on product today. Follow me on Twitter if you have any questions. And make a cal.com account. That's all I'm asking for. It's really not that much.
Awesome. That's all, folks. Sorry for not having both of us on the video. We had some technical issues prior to recording, but hopefully you enjoy this conversation. I love bringing founders like Pierre on the show. I learned a ton. It's been inspiring. And stay tuned for more founders to hop on this podcast and share their stories. Cheers.
Hey, cheers. Thank you.